Hi everyone, I have wanted to make this video for such a long time, and whenever I've visualised reaching this point in my business, one of the images that I've had in my head is of sitting down and telling you guys, and this just feels like such a marker for me and such a moment. It's something that I have really waited for, and so I'm really pleased to be able to sit down and talk to you about all of this today. I've made no secret of the fact that up until now I hadn't paid off my initial investment into my business. So about 10 days ago I finally broke even. I paid off the director's loan that I'd made to my business. And so from here on in, my business can turn a profit and I can contribute to our family finances from my books, from my creative small business, from, these stories I've come up with. And it's just, it's been a long time coming, and it's really validating and just gives worth to everything that I do. I mean, there are lots of things that give me worth, but this is like a real turning point to be able to actually make a profit from this business. And I know that businesses typically take, I think it's 2 years to break even. I registered my company 4.5 years ago, so it has been a little while. And in this video, I want to talk about, why the initial investment was, I don't want to say like so large, because compared to lots of other companies, it's not a huge amount of money, but big enough that it took me a while to pay back, and why it took so long. And then I guess, where we go from here. Soon I'll be making my new goals in my yearly goal setting video. So I feel like it's really important to share these things, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's a lot of noise about, I sell this amount of stuff every month, and if you just do these things, then you'll be a millionaire. And a lot of people who seem to be very successful, and that's wonderful. But when what you see around you is a lot of success, and those are the sort of vocal people, that it can make you feel like a failure. So I think it's really important for people to share the challenges, their honesty, because there are all different sorts of businesses, and some have a higher initial investment than others, or some take longer for all sorts of reasons, which can be global, we'll get onto that, or personal, or there can be all sorts of things. And just because it takes time, or your business is slow to grow, or you're not raking in the cash, it doesn't mean that you don't have worth, and it doesn't mean that you're a failure. And so that's why I think it's important. And I think that the more we share, the more we help each other, because our experiences can be useful to somebody else. And that's why I make these videos, and why I have my podcast as well, where I talk to other small business owners, creative businesses. I just think that all ships rise with the tide, so sharing is good. I had to stop myself from saying sharing is caring, because it's too twee. So as I say, I will go through kind of what got me to this point, what helped me to pay off that initial investment, and look at the future a little bit. So when I set up my business, when I wrote my first book, I had to invest some money into publishing that book. I initially looked at having it traditionally published, which would have meant that the publisher would have paid all of those things. But the book didn't place, and I could have pursued, that was hard to say, I could have pursued it further, but I, by that point, had got really excited about indie publishing, and that was the route that I wanted to go down. So I changed course, decided to self-publish, independently publish, however you want to phrase it. And obviously that meant that I had to invest in the things that a publisher would. So the biggest things, there are lots of little bits, but the biggest costs were the editing and the cover design, and particularly the editing. Now, I don't come from a literary background. I did a degree in marine biology, so science. My A-levels, I do have an A-level in French, but that's not massively helpful in writing a book in English. So I wanted to make sure that my book was edited really well, that it was really polished, because I didn't feel that I had those skills. And at this point right now, I don't feel I would need so much editing. I have more experience myself. I know more about grammar and structure and all that stuff to be able to craft a book and then just have one professional look. But at that point, I felt I needed two. And lots of you may want 2 more rounds, whatever you want. But as I say, right now, depending on the book, for a children's book, I might get 2 rounds of editing, but for a longer book, probably just get 1 look through it after I've looked through it a billion times and it's been beta read and so forth. It's an opinion thing, really, of what's right for you. And of course it depends on how many copies you think you might sell so you can pay back that level of editing. But I wanted to have a copy editing and proofreading, so the copy editing before, then I would go through it again, and before it was typeset, and then once it was typeset, which I had done by an external company, again I could do that, oh clicky wrist, I could do that now myself. I then had proofreading at the end to check for anything final at the end. So having 2 rounds of editing is expensive, because with a novel length book, as Milk, my first book, is, you pay by the hour. So that's a lot of money for a book of that length, for somebody to look through that twice. And I don't regret doing that whatsoever. I worked with an amazing editor who I've worked with since. She was fantastic. It was money well spent, because I didn't have the skills, and without her help I couldn't have produced such a polished book. So yeah, no regrets whatsoever. I needed to have that editing support, which I know my skill set and I know now what I need now, and that's different to what I needed then. So I had to pay a little bit more for editing. I had cover design, which for a book like that I probably would again, but I had all the formatting done. I paid for that because I didn't know how to do it. I do now. And you know, other little costs and this and that associated with the book. Now, I am immensely proud of that book. It was something that was very dear to my heart. If you're not aware of it, it's the story of me breastfeeding my 3 babies, and every other chapter is something like history or biology or sociology, and it basically it gives a window into the world of a regular person having a baby and breastfeeding. You know, I'm just a normal person, and living with the sort of pressures and society that I experience here in the UK, and why it's like that, what it's like. And it's essentially a social commentary, and it's a lot of love went into it, and a lot of, I like to think, sort of hope. And yeah, I think it's just, I wanted to basically write a breastfeeding friend into a book, so somebody who doesn't have that community around them can read my book and get it in a book. That was the idea. And it sold a few hundred copies, and you know, I don't know whether that will sound like a lot or not a lot to you, but for me, as a niche book, I'm really proud of that, because it's, you know, there's obviously a bit of a limited audience for that book, which is part of why it was hard to place with a traditional publisher. Now, I did look at how much, you know, how many copies I would have to sell in order to turn a profit, but it's very hard when you have different ways. So is it ebook, is it paperback, where have they bought it from, is it direct, is it, and with no idea of how big my audience is, how many copies I typically sell, would it sell at all? Like, it was just a nebulous thing. So I tried, but I would sway between, well, I'm not going to sell anything and I'm going to sell millions of copies. And even trying to figure out where the break-even point was for the book, I just couldn't tell you, because, well, it depends. It depends which format and where you bought it from. And so, yeah, as I say, I am immensely proud. That book did what I wanted it to do. It's the book I wanted it to be, and it has sold well for being a really niche market book. However, for that being what the book is, I invested too much money in it, but I needed to invest that because I was new to the business. Does that make sense? So that book hasn't made a profit. I doubt it ever will. There's a lot of costs that have gone into that book over the years, including buying stock and marketing and, you know, stuff like material, things to post it in, and bookmarks and events and all sorts of stuff that's gone into the costs associated with that book. So then I published Lily the Limpet Gets Lost, which has done much better. It's got a broader appeal. I made a second edition of that book so that I could do a better quality print. That book's done loads better. So Milk came out in 2018, Lily came out in 2019. And after Lily came out, I was like, okay, I'm going to do loads of events, loads of school visits, so as well as my book sales, I can support that with service, you know, me kind of being, hey, I'm an author, and selling that. Selling me. So that was the plan in the beginning of 2020. And that's exactly what I did. I started going to lots of events. I did a whole load of school visits. I had a speaking engagement. It was going really well. And so all that money that I'd put into producing particularly Milk, but also all the sundry costs of the business, I was like, okay, I can get that paid off. And then we had a global pandemic. So I've talked about this on here before, but basically, you know, that took away in-person selling. So the only way I could sell was online. So, I mean, thank you so much to you guys who watch my videos, who have been an amazing audience over these years. But, you know, so all I had was social media. So all any of us had. There was no being able to go to an event and show people my books. And no one's heard of me. So there's only marketing and social media, you know, online marketing. Also meant the schools were closed, so no school visits. No, all of the things that I had planned, none of it, on top of having to homeschool my kids. So up until that point, my youngest was very young. She was 2 going into the pandemic, I think, 2.5. So I had been at home looking after her, and I would have people looking after her, grandparents or my husband, a couple of days a week, so that I could write and start building my business. And she had just started nursery when the pandemic hit. So I then ended up with all 3 children at home, homeschooling, you know, all of the mental health stuff that came alongside the pandemic, and this business that I'd been kind of at that point where you're like, yeah, here we go, just, no, all gone. And I did everything I could. I really did. If you look back at you know, I tried all different kinds of marketing, and I did loads of stuff on social media, and I tried lots of different things to see if they would work. And I started working on a new book, but I didn't have any money coming in, and I already had a director's loan that I'd used to pay, you know, all of these costs up to date. There was nothing with which to create a new book. And so when I had created Milk and Cookies and established that I could not illustrate it in order to cut costs, and I made the smart decision of working with Rhiannon Thomas, who I've worked with since as well. She's wonderful. You know, there needed to be some money, and there was none. And the pandemic meant that there would be very little more. It was trickling in. So at that point, I ran the Kickstarter campaign. This was in 2021, and I am so grateful to everyone who backed that book. It wouldn't exist, and I felt it was such an important book, and I'm so glad that other people felt that too. And when I say I used Kickstarter, it really did kickstart my business, you know, and so many things. And when I had spent at that point over a year trying to like hold on with my fingernails to this business, it meant the world. It really did. So the Kickstarter finished in May last year and the book came out in September. At the same time, I'd been working on self-publishing, which was my fourth book, which is a guide to self-publishing. It's not a super long book. It's about, I can't think how many words now, 40,000 maybe? I don't know, but not super long. It's maybe 130 pages perhaps. So I managed to finance editing that, and I had an artist create the artwork for the front cover, but I formatted the whole thing. I formatted the children's books as well, because by that point I'd learnt those skills. So Kickstarter funded Milk and Cookies, and the little bit of sales that I was making meant that I could bring out self-publishing as well. As things started to lift this year, because I feel like until January this year, although there was a little bit, I did a couple of author events, it still was very much not happening. This year things have really opened up again, and that's enabled me to relaunch all of the things that I was going to do in 2020. And so I was really glad that over the pandemic I'd managed to produce 2 more books, and that obviously having more products, more, you know, when someone looks at my books, that there's more likely to be something that appeals to them, that I'd kept myself up to date, learnt new skills, built an audience, all of those things. And as I say, I'm so grateful for all the support. Everyone who's bought a book, watched a video. My channel monetized during the pandemic in May 2020, I think. And so this has been a wonderful help as well. Everyone who supported my business in all the different ways that you have, even if it's just liking a video, honestly, it's so appreciated. But this year I was able to, work on all of that stuff that I'd had planned in 2020. And I almost feel like when I say I've been running this business for 4.5 years, I almost feel like it hasn't been, because we lost that chunk in the middle. And I think that I would have got to the point I'm at now far earlier. Well, I know I would have, without that happening. And, having such limitations on time and money and headspace and all of the things. And everyone who's run a business through the pandemic, just, hats off to you all. We all know it was hard. This year happened. I started going to selling events again, schools again. And then I was lucky enough to be commissioned to produce Secret Seagrass Meadows with Natural England. And what a privilege to not have to stump up the money up front, which I'd used all the money by doing self-publishing. And a children's book is expensive because of the illustrations. Any book is expensive because if it's not illustrations, it's editing. But it would have been a while before I had any money, where basically just not paying off my director's loan, kicking that down the road, which obviously is money that's come from our family. And I was really getting to a point where I needed to pay that back, So yeah, having a project that meant that those costs were met, not by me, and whereby I could continue using all the other things that I was doing to pay back that investment, that director's loan. So still have a new book, still have, keep staying, I guess, relevant, having a new product, having the creative projects that I was interested in, being able to put the messages out there that I wanted, be creative. I mean, when I say it's a privilege, just in so many ways, not just like scientifically and creatively, but also for my business. So amazing. And the culmination of all of that, basically this year being not quite so pandemic-y, has meant that I finally broke even. I was at a selling event in Crabble near Dover, and I made a sale and I was like, there we go, that's it, I can now pay back my director's loan fully. So yeah, that's why it took so long, in a very long, rambly way. And the things that helped the most to pay that money back were the school visits, in-person selling. So as I say, both of those are not going to happen in the pandemic. YouTube, you know, I'm really, really grateful. Book sales too, of course, and then being commissioned for a book as well, absolutely amazing. But I would say in particular, being able to see people face to face and to be able to do school visits, or I mean that would be the same with any kind of service you're providing, whether that's like coaching, mentoring, speaking, whatever it might be. So you have those things as well as the book sales, and they support each other, because people who you know, you do a school visit, you sell books. You sell books, people hear about your author visits, and so on. They feed into each other and build together. And yeah, having this channel monetized, I would say those are the biggest things that have really, really helped. And so I focused a lot of energy into those things so that I can sell as many books as I can, so that I can continue to be creative, and so I can go out there and share my stories with young people. And so if you're at this point where you're also trying to grow your business, you know, look at the things which are making the most money for you and capitalize on those, and look for opportunities to sell and opportunities for other things that make money. And I recently made a video with some suggestions, which I'll link below, of things that have helped me. So going forward, I think it's more of the same. I'm working on another book with Natural England, which is just amazing. And I will continue sharing all the things that I learn about publishing, about running a small business. I love sharing these stories that I create, and I love seeing that people enjoy them. And the fact that that can be something that contributes to our family as well, as it should, you know, of course, as a business, is just absolutely wonderful and really means a lot. So that was really rambling. But there we are. Thank you for watching all of that. If you made it through to the end, please hit like. If you are as excited as I am. Don't know why I can't speak today. If you're running a creative small business, then just, you know, all of the love and respect and hope and all of the words for you and your business, and I hope it goes really well for you. And yeah, thank you very much for everything, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.